And I can share my screen here. Okay, perfect. Yeah, just to remind everyone of what we discussed at the last meeting. We have these kind of like 4 things that we're working on, continuing to work on as we get closer to our end goal of this MVP version 1. Sharding pagination is one of them. Actually, I think these are wrong, but we wanted to talk definitely about mutable versus immutable CLEs. That's one thing we definitely need to discuss. We had a discussion about the use of identifiers in our bootstrap example. And I think we said we definitely want an identifier at least at the very top of the file.
Yeah.
And then that can just be modified, and we don't need an alias event or anything like that. I think that's what we agreed on. Was that right?
Yeah, I think in general, my mental model here is you look at a package, you get a CLE URL, you
Yep.
start at the top of that document and move down. And you always parse all the front matter, and then you get to the events list. And then you only have to go down to the last event that you already received.
Right.
And so because you're always parsing the front matter, mutations of the front matter don't have to be signaled. They just happen. But
Right.
anything in events that either it yeah, like it needs well, so in that sort of that mental model kind of is, I guess now that I think about it, is biased towards immutable events, because then you never change anything that's beyond that threshold, and you just add a new thing to update to supersede the old thing. I don't actually know how the parsing story would work if the events are mutable, because then you always have to look at the whole thing, or you have to have a separate log of like events that have been mutated with a timestamp so that you can parse that too, or you have to hoist mutated events to the top. But I guess, yeah.
So, edge case, are
Yeah.
we absolutely certain that there will never be anything changing in older events? What I'm thinking about is that what happens if you want to extend backwards, simply so that tooling that uses CLE can more accurately recognize the true age of components that it's tracking, rather than some of the incorrect information that you might have from something
So
like
when I talk about immutable and mutable events, I am talking about the objects themselves, not the conceptual event. Even with the immutable model, I anticipate that last year I published event ID 3, and now I'm publishing another event object ID 5 that updates ID 3, and then provides the new information. And so in order to get to understand the actual correct information for event 3, you have to have event ID 3 and event ID 5. And then you mush them together, and that gives you the fully up-to-date thing. So in other words, it's more like Git, where you're appending your things, but the file can be updated, but the file's contents are the aggregate of all the things that reference it. Does that make sense? So like when I'm saying immutable, I just mean, I basically mean append or prepend only.
So you're saying an example here is we have this event type ID 3 end of support on the 5th.
So if you want to take that effective date and change it, 2015, 2017, doesn't matter. You publish my model is that you publish a new event with an updated information. You don't even have to supply the versions and support ID if you don't want to, and add another field like updates :3. Or we could mandate that you have to supply every field, and you'd have replaces 3. But also you don't even have to do that, because if you put a brand new event, ID5, that has the same range, it already supersedes it, like implicitly.
Okay. Can we
So
take
so
one
as
step? Can we take
yeah,
one step back and just at a
yeah.
high level, immutable versus mutable? Like, why would we want to consider immutable
So
CLE
so
events?
I mean, let me retitle these two things as prepend only
Mm-hmm.
uh, versus fully editable.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that you want prepend only is so that when you have what will inevitably always be large JSON documents, nobody is required to parse the entirety of the document for updates. It allows
Mm-hmm.
iterative updating. When you have fully editable, you always have to ingest the entirety of the database in order to get the true state of the thing, because the last bit of the file might have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably better than immutable mutable, because it's like the conceptual status of something is always represented by like the latest object that describes it.
Yeah, when I think of
Yeah.
mutable or immutable, I think
Yeah.
of like, something on a ledger, right? Like a blockchain or
Yes.
whatever.
And that's how I see
That's
this.
an
This is a
implementation
ledger.
detail. Right. That's an implementation detail. But I think
Yes.
I think in the specification, unless you tell me otherwise, we
Mhm.
can require that it be prepend only. That's what we
Yeah.
want, right?
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's why I'm now realizing right now in this call that mutable and immutable are the wrong words to talk about, because it's the conceptual status of anything, which is what the events are describing, is always mutable,
Right.
because you never can guarantee anything won't change, right? It could always come back to life, or you could realize you made a mistake. So it's more that like it's exactly like a blockchain or a Git log or whatever. It's just prepend only, so that once you've consumed an object in this list, that object will never change. The
Right.
thing it's describing certainly will or may, but
Then if that
that
is the case, I
yeah
think that
yeah
makes it very, very simple, right?
yes,
However, I do think we will need a change event to support corrections.
perhaps. But I would say that if we like in my 3 and 5 example, like 3 is the first one. The order would actually be swapped, right? 5 would come higher than 3.
Right.
So 3 comes out. You don't need a change event to know that 5 is changing the support range for the version 3 major line, because ID5 just tells you that. In other words, what I
True.
anticipate is that somebody will be ingesting these events all at once at first, and then iteratively afterwards, and that they will be storing those events and then mapping them to a state.
For this, it makes sense. Like the end of support, right?
Sure.
I understand that. Now, if I make a mistake and
Mhm.
say, well, Acme was not acquired by Microsoft, it was acquired by Oracle,
Mhm.
or it wasn't acquired at all.
Mhm.
How do I correct that?
So when it is when it is an event for which the type and version range are the same, it simply replaces the previous event or events. When that is not the case, like it's a different event or something, we either need an event type that nullifies a previous one,
Right.
or we need for each event type, we need a counter event type.
That gets complicated, but I like the nullify idea.
Right.
Like a
So
withdrawn or something,
yeah,
something
or
like that.
yanked or whatever you want to call it, just
Right.
canceled,
Right.
reverted, whatever. Yeah, an event type for that literally has nothing but an effective, the date stamps, that type, and the ID that is targeting. That's it.
Right. Boom.
That
Done.
yeah. I
Well,
like the simplicity of that as well.
But there'll be a simple way to actually retrieve the latest ID, so that with the minimal data traffic, you know that there is a change or there isn't a change.
So what I was thinking is that in the front matter, we do have a modified date, and any changes to the document, updates that modified timestamp, so that as you parse the URL and you grab all the front matter, you're going to see that date and say, oh, it's a newer date, or it's a later date than I last grabbed it. I have to now go farther into the events list until I find the last event I already got.
Right, but the
Does that make
events,
sense?
a single sort of JSON file. As I said, I mean, basically, if you've got sort of tooling which is retrieving, trying to retrieve for say 10,000 or 100,000 components, and since you last ran a cron job to update, perhaps out of those 10,000, only 6 have actually had new events. How are you going to make sure that although you're actually reaching out and doing a check on your 10,000 things,
Yes.
you're only sort of downloading JSON for 5 and not 10,000?
Okay, so I don't think that we can avoid I think we don't think we can avoid some, we can't avoid 10,000 net connections, right? But you should be able to streaming parse 100 bytes or something, and then figure out that you can drop the connection. That's what's in my head. If you can think of a way to avoid that, that's great. But each of these 10,000, if it was a centralized source, then of course there's a centralized place that could tell you what the ones have updated. But these are 10,000 disparate sources, so you have to ask each one of them essentially, have you changed? And I don't think that's avoidable. And I think that the usage patterns I envision are that there will be aggregators that do all this polling, and then they create a stateful query interface, database or API or whatever, that can answer the questions people actually want to know, which are, hey, I have this thing, what's its status? Or I care about these things, notify me when something changes for these things. But
You
the
mean like
CLE
a
is
dev type of aggregator or something like that? Yeah.
Exactly. Or Sneak or White Source or whatever, right? Like,
Right.
Because like we're the stream of data. We are not the query interface for it. And so
Right.
we are optimizing for those interfaces to most efficiently keep in sync, but they are handling all the queries.
Yeah, the problem with that is that Sneak as an aggregator would have to do it once per
Package or something.
once per package, and then anyone who's actually a consumer of a sort of Sneak service would not be connecting to the end thing. It would basically get the aggregated information.
Correct.
But what about when you've got stuff which is not like running in the cloud? You've actually got to do it yourself, and I'm thinking about like for instance, dependency track, where you're running yourself. Now you might have an integration with Sneak, and that integration might actually be extended in the future to support additions to the Sneak API, which could then cater for it.
Sure.
But if you're not integrating with Sneak, or you're not integrating with another aggregator, would you say, well, ultimately you're going to have your tooling is going to be beneficial to you to actually add support for an aggregator?
Yeah, or build your own. The way so what you're describing, if I had this need and I was unable to partner with any existing aggregator, I would abuse GitHub Actions cron jobs to store in Git all of the CLE data I cared about, and I would use the file system as a database and query against that, because that's free and sustainable. But like, that's going to be a pain in the ass and slow as hell, but I'm not paying for it. But like the actual aggregators will have proper systems for this sort of thing.
Yes.
So it's possible for an independent person to do, but like doing anything at scale is going to be difficult for an independent person to do, and I think that's fine. That's like acceptable, as long as what we're doing isn't making it like exceedingly harder for individuals as compared to the aggregators. And I don't think it is, because like that's also part of why I'm thinking about the efficiency model of like you don't have to download a 10 meg file for each of your packages. You only have to download the first couple hundred bytes, and then you can move on to the next one.
Yeah.
You mentioned dependency track, Simons, and I kind of see two use cases of CLE and dependency track. One is the obvious one where you're going to be consuming CLE events for all the open source libraries that you might be using, right?
Yes.
The second use of dependency track is we talked about adding support for like a release management function at the project level. Well, your project's in dependency track could be the source, the creator of CLE events, and dependency track would store those events in its database and be able to dynamically provide the CLE events for any project in its portfolio.
Right. Now
So
that's
it's going to be consuming and publishing.
and of course you can implement the two separately.
Mhm.
So I there was a question in there because you would have to consume first, and only then would you be able to implement publish. Or in theory, could you actually say, look, we're going to do an MVP of publishing like right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, they would both be independent, but think about it from both angles, Mark, because
Yes.
this one piece of software is going to do both.
Yes.
Okay, so identifiers at the top of CLE, prepend only, and a withdrawn event type is
Yeah.
essentially kind of
Yeah.
what we have
Yeah.
agreed on
However
so
we
far.
spell that word. Yeah. Withdrawn,
Okay.
deleted, revoked. Doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Cool. So that
okay,
answers that question.
One thing.
Okay.
Okay. We have this, top of the CLE where we have the identifiers and a bunch of other data. How do we if we have multiple CLE files with events, how do they transfer across the different CLE files? Is
So
there a head CLE file that just has the
Yes.
identifiers?
Yeah,
Or
the
is there
the package only points to one URL, which is always the root or the head of the list. My idea was that in the mental model of streaming parsing top down, the events list would always be the second to last key, and the last key, last optional key, would be like a pointer to the next URL. And then that URL at the top would say, here's my root file, here's a pointer to the previous one maybe, and then have its list of events. And then at the end, here's the pointer to the next one, right? And then so you always, in the same way as like one of those cursor-based pagination APIs, you get the first page, and then you find out if there's another one. And if there is, you get that. And you find out if there's another one, and then so on. And you just keep moving. And the first time you're ingesting, you just recurse infinitely until you're done. And after that, you only have to recurse until you've hit an ID that you've already received.
Right.
One thing that we may want to consider is something along the lines, but maybe a little bit better, of sitemap index. So a website can have like a sitemap, which is an XML file, but it can also have a sitemap index, which is index of multiple sitemap files, which tells you exactly which ones are there. So the premise being that if you have 100 different CLEs, well, you would not know that you had 100 until you start going through them. If you had the index file with ordering guaranteed, you would actually know in advance that there's 100.
So I think that's fine. The what I want to avoid is I should be able to, as long as I don't change the ordering and contents of pre-existing events objects, I should be able to rearrange all the old stuff, the shards, as freely as I like. It shouldn't matter to anyone. It's just the next time they look, they might have a different path to walk, but they'll get all the same events in the same order. And I don't want those changes to unnecessarily create churn in a different file. And then separately, but like if the sitemap index you're talking about is just a list of all the shards, I think that's fine. If I rearrange if I add a shard or rename a shard or whatever, then sure, I can update the index. But like, I'm envisioning that for a project that like I can well, no, I don't want to do that. Forget that.
Another,
yeah, go ahead.
I think I get your point. My I don't really care about the index. What I care about is like the amount of resources necessary to be able to process a feed. If we could do like, for example, the number of shards that exist at the top of the CLE file itself, that might even be sufficient, right? I just need to know in advance how much processing this is going to take, because that tells me whether or not I can do it in real time or if I have to batch this out.
Is there a disadvantage to just always batching it out for batch sizes of 1? That seems much simpler and more efficient to just force everyone to build for batching always. No?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a use case in mind, but
I just know that every time I've coded something for one thing, I've inevitably had to code it for n things. And so whenever I start coding things for n things in the beginning, I never have to deal with it. So I'm biased, I guess, towards that design, but like we could certainly do what you're talking about. I'm ambivalent, I guess.
Something to consider. I don't want to. I don't want to make this. You know, I'm not going to die on that hill. But it would be good information to have.
Yeah, I can see that.
This index you're talking about.
Not the index,
but the size of the files.
The size of it.
But
that's what I care about.
The number of files doesn't tell you the size, because you could have 2 events in each file. You could have 2 million.
Right.
So what you actually want is the number of events. And do we really want to? I mean, if you do incrementing integers, you already get that implicitly. But that's not, we'd want something like that to be explicit. Like, I guess we could just.
That's a good
point.
Like
I see there's count 2 at the top. I mean,
sorry. Yeah, this is just
that's the total number of events you have to process.
That's actually not bad. Yeah, it's obvious.
This is how NuGet does it, where they have an index page for a package, for example. This is Newtonsoft JSON. Then they have catalog pages, I guess, which are, if you go into one of these catalog pages, I think it's this one, for example. This is a specific version, actually, but essentially something like this, where there's an index, you have the pages all listed in the index, and you'll know which is first because it's ordered or time-stamped. And yeah, you can see how many pages there are basically at a glance.
You don't think I like the idea of putting a count right next to an array, because then you have 2 sources of truth to keep in sync?
Yeah. The actual schema here, I think it's unintuitive, but just the concept in general of having, you know, either a sitemap index or some sort of index that.
So the other thing is but that's on a single page doc, putting the count at the top is exactly that problem. So like, I guess what we could say is, well, so we could do count in this file, and then you have to update it every time. But what you really want is the count across all files. This is a tough one.
We already have this, though. I mean, I think it was the obvious thing. If we're doing prepend and we're saying the ID is always an incrementing integer.
We haven't been saying that, though. We could choose to say that, but But then because this is JSON and JavaScript is a very common JSON thing, then we're limited to 2 to the 53rd events.
Oh. Oh.
It's not an infinitely infinite integer space. So, which is why I had originally been very explicit with saying that, like, or careful with saying that it can be any value that is unique to the CLE pile, right? Because
Okay.
then you can start with integers, and most people should do integers, but then there's a built-in solution for the people who have that many events. We could still do integers, and that just means JavaScript people are kind of like in older environments are going to be screwed for some projects, right? Because like there isn't yet a feature. There's a feature that's progressing but hasn't yet landed that would allow that problem to be worked around. But I'm pretty JavaScript biased and would prefer not to have a world where that is the case.
Well, I see that there's a couple of problems there, because I see many kind of old projects where the number of versions are paginated, and literally you're going to hit that kind of 250 limit. Also, we've talked about
Well, it's not 250. It's 2 to the power of 53. It's a very large number.
It is it's like 9 quadrillion or something. I don't even
but
know.
like Twitter famously did incrementing integer IDs, and then when they hit 2 to the 53rd tweets, everything broke, and so they had to like do a bunch of work in advance of that to avoid that happening. It was called the Twitpocalypse. Every third-party Twitter client had to rebuild themselves to use like Twitter's API passed ID, the integer, and ID_str, a string form of it, so that JavaScript clients didn't break. Like it was, yeah.
That sounds like the problem that they had.
So is that, Jordan, is that so the JSON spec is defined in ECMA 262, right?
No, it's defined in ECMA 404.
Oh, okay. So 262 is limited to 2 to the 53, but the JSON spec is not?
Correct. The JSON spec says any digits, but
interesting.
it does not actually require them to be parsable in JavaScript. That is so therefore it is not incorrect to produce JSON that JavaScript can't parse. It's just absurd to do that, right? So there is a proposal in JavaScript that will allow you to call JSON parse with a callback, and for numbers that aren't representable, you will be able to receive the raw string value so that you can produce a big int or something something else. But that is not, I think that's stage 2 or 3, and it's not shipped, I think, anywhere yet. It's called like JSON parse with source text. But that means like that's not something that's trivial to polyfill unless you also include all of JSON, right? And so it's like it's still not yet a reasonable thing to do if you might have JavaScript clients. So we could mandate it be the string form of an auto incrementing integer, and then that works around that problem. And then, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so this is the integer is just for a specific project that's using the CLE, right?
Correct.
It's
so
not
the
globally.
Would be, it's not global. It's just within the project, not the file,
right.
But when you've ingested all the CLE events, the IDs must be unique. And so if we mandate that they be integers, then they're integers there. So it's a given project never has to worry about the IDs clashing with another project's.
Right.
It just has to make sure it's internally consistent. And that does work with string integers versus number integers, right? Like maybe that's the simplest workaround is just it must be a string that of an auto incrementing integer, and then you have your count.
If we take a large project that's open source, like the OpenJDK or the Linux kernel, or even is Node open source? I don't even know. But you take a large project like that, and I don't even think they would come close to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking as well. The number we're talking about here is 9 quadrillion.
It's true. TypeScript has 3,500 versions published on NPM. including
Mm.
pre-releases. React has 2,400. That's 2 packages. So like out of that 3,500 for TypeScript, that they have at least 3,500 events plus potentially end of supports for all of them. Like in theory, they would do it a bit more, with ranges, but like it
Yeah, I
will
mean,
be
they
a
could have a few
while.
million.
Yeah. So it's also fine if we say we acknowledge that this V1 has this limit, and
Mhm.
eventually there will be a V2 that, if needed, that works around it, right? That's as long as we're explicitly communicating and deciding that, that's fine. It just like my, engineering brain doesn't like intentionally
Limits.
putting in a wart.
Yeah. I would normally agree with you if it was globally scoped.
Yeah, I mean, if it's globally scoped, like
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
for
a whole
sure,
different
for
problem.
sure.
Right.
And now that I understand that it's 2 to the power of 53 and not
Yeah,
53,
right.
that is such a vast number.
Mhm.
I can't think of any possible way, given the fact that it's limited to the project, that it's ever going to be a constraint.
It may
And
not be.
Famous
there is
last words.
Yeah. 64K of RAM ought to be enough
Jordy's
for
is
like,
what
everybody.
hold my beer.
Yeah. Let's pull up the tapes from the IPv4 meetings.
Well, but there's one question now. This shows like how old I am. Back when I was working as a sort of tester in like a network monitoring software, which was doing like multiple connections going out, it was like verboten to like when you initiate a connection to not break it down afterwards. Now this was before streaming was a thing.
Mm.
This was like really early days, but have things moved on? I mean, there was no
Yeah.
hardly HTTP2, but so it's totally safe to make a connection. Start downloading the first few hundred bytes of the file, parse it like dynamically, know that you can now drop the connection, and that
If
is not.
it's idempotent, yes. And in this case, it would just be a GET request for JSON data, which would be idempotent. So like not over time, I guess, but like it's not going to mutate anything if you like the danger is more if you're like posting to something and then you drop the connection, you actually can't be sure still if that server is going to stop, like abort the change or process the change or process the partial change. But unless the server has communicated a contract. But for gets, which are supposed to be non-side affecting, that concern has I don't even. It may have been a case in the beginning, but like I just don't think it's a concern.
Yes. I mean, I contributed to my first ITF RFC sort of over a quarter of a century ago.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
in the year 2000, I would also not be so cavalier about it because,
Right.
like, it feels like it would be easy to DOS a web server that way, but
Yeah.
there's just like, if that were still the case, like, it would be really trivial to DOS everybody. So, like, I'm pretty sure we're okay with this with forgets.
Cool. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, worth
Okay.
asking though. Like, it's not a silly question.
So we have the CLE with multiple CLE files because we're splitting them out. How do we know which is the latest CLE file?
It's the one the package points to, and
Okay.
the front matter will be different. And what I keep saying things as if I've been thinking about them for a while, but I just came up on the spot. And earlier I said, well, all the shards that aren't the root, their front matter should be root, the root URL, previous where it came from or something. And that way, at the top of every file, you can immediately figure out, are you the first page or not? And similarly, the first page has all the other information, including identifier. And we don't even need the identifier in the successive pages because you get that from the root.
Okay. Okay.
And please, no matter how assertive I may sound when I'm talking, please interrupt or like contradict me or push back if you have any thoughts. Like this is just how I talk, but like I'm not dying on any of these hills.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about it, like, this versus like I haven't thought through this either, but some sort of like file convention, like dash index or something to let you know, if we did this type of index file where we had all these different CLE pages of some kind.
Well, and I think we could establish a convention just by having all of our guides and explanations like use one. But I think that there are so many edge cases of things like, well, the latest one we serve out of GitHub, but all the old ones we serve off a CDN or whatever.
Right.
Right. That makes a lot of sense because the cost per storage for things that you're never going to write to might actually be a lot cheaper than something that you write to all the time. So they may be distributed across multiple systems and file systems and stuff. So that index might actually be really useful if they're stored in two different types of media.
Right.
Yeah, and is it something you could do where you say, hey, this is our file convention? I don't know, you have some sort of special file name that points you to the index, or is that too risky to do, and you really just have to read the file to know what type of
I would
file it is?
I would say so given all the things we said, let's add to the root an optional field in the front matter that says index. If present, it's a URL that, we can define it very simply as like an object with a single property, two properties, one root points to the root and another, indexes or files or URLs or whatever. There's just a straight up array of URLs. And that way, if you choose to provide an index, you have opted into the obligation to keep it in sync. And by default, you don't need to deal with that because most projects aren't going to need that because they're not going to be big enough. Right.
I think that's very pragmatic.
Okay. Awesome. So you have in each of the pages, I'm calling them pages, I suppose.
Each page.
Each page you have something that points back to the root index so that a user can, when they're parsing one of these, they say, oh, here's the root index. They go back to the root index and then they see all the list of pages. And there's no sort of like file convention or anything like that because it's too,
there's like not a lot of value from mandating something like that, I think. And like people will form their own conventions and that's okay as long as we've made it like I'm envisioning I'm going to be writing a tool to ingest this stuff. How can I make my job as easy as possible to do the correct thing and have that stay true over time? And I feel like we're still checking that box.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
But there's also going to have to be tools to basically help publish it, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. And I'm going to be building one of those for NPM too, right? Where it's basically like a pre-published tool that updates your file, or a post-published tool or whatever, right? I haven't quite thought through that yet, but yeah, there's going to be lots of tooling. And
so you're volunteering to create one for NPM?
I mean, don't publicly commit me to doing so.
No. I'm just personal
but
curiosity.
I have a sickness and the cure is only creating NPM packages forever. So probably so.
That's awesome.
You got some competition. What's that one guy's name? He's got 10,000 NPM packages.
Oh yeah, no, I don't have the most packages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I'm not sure how many people have more than me, but I know at least one is Cindersaurus, who has thousands. You go. Yeah,
that's the guy. That's the guy.
And even if you take out the packages that he just made so that he didn't have to depend on someone else's existing package, he still has the most. So it's yeah.
Okay, great. I noted all of those different things down. And then the last thing we had, which we kind of at the end of last meeting we talked about a little bit, was component aliasing. And
wait, before we dive real back into that.
Okay, yeah.
Is that the only thing left to decide? I know we have to write stuff up. Is that the only thing left to decide before we're at MVP?
Let me think here.
Steve, what about the IANA thing?
Oh yeah, the dot well known and all that sort of thing. We should probably start that registration process that's going to be part of the spec.
Okay.
And
so we have the question of aliases. We have getting on the IANA stuff ASAP.
Yeah.
and then we have doing all the stuff we all just decided. Is
Right.
that it? I just
I
want to
think
get an
so.
exhaustive list of like tasks.
Yeah, and then I think we still need to go through more examples.
Sure, and then
of
fleshing out
real life.
examples
Yeah.
and cookbooks or whatever we want to call that. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
totally.
Well, I mean, we still have the English language version of the spec to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. We have to do all the things. I just mean like decisions, because once we've decided, then it's just a matter of
Right.
knuckling down.
Jordan, just FYI,
Mhm.
I was a couple months ago I had created a Prince XML container, and I had published that to the local packages in the TC54 organization on GitHub. And right now I've got I think I actually have the GitHub action in place on the CLE repo. We're all set to be able to generate both the online documentation as well as the printable PDF in a single build.
Sweet.
So
That's wonderful.
we should be all set. There's a few caveats that I need to work out with Aki, but yeah, we're set for that. I also need to get the license for Prince.
I'm really
and-
glad to hear that I'm not going to default into managing this process for 2 TCs.
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Although you know, whoever, which one of you is going to do the dot well known registration?
Why don't I at least own filing an issue to detail what needs to be done, and then we can go from there async.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Reason why I ask is that the TG4, which is just now forming for the sustainability work, they're also going to need a dot well known. So it'd be great to have 2 submissions from Ecma at the same time.
Okay, cool. And yeah, I would love help after I write up my issue or whatever from people who understand the IANA process. Like there was a question in a separate venue about a registry on IANA. Like we're trying to figure out if we can RFC the rules for the registry, but not have to make an RFC every time we update the contents of the registry. And it's not clear if that's an option.
Right. I know.
Just so that it's kind of perhaps like mentioned as a thing to check in the issue. In my memory, when you apply for something, and again, I'm remembering sort of applying for a port allocation, you have to have basically a contact details, like an email address.
Mhm.
So would this be an Ecma email address?
I'm sure I could get Aki to make an email list, or we could just use one of our emails for the short term, whatever
Yeah.
people prefer.
And this is it should, I'm sure that the RFC for sort of registering well-known would tell you what is actually required. But
Right.
it's important to think about that kind of stuff, because if an email address is required, you know, it's something that mustn't change.
Right.
It will always be contactable. And again,
Yeah, that's true.
we registered a port with an email address for a domain which no longer exists.
Yeah. I mean, a Google group is also doesn't meet that long-term archival thing. So if we care about that, then we should have Aki make an account or a list.
Yeah, but as I said, it might not be needed for well-known. It's just
Right.
my memory of what used to be years and years ago.
Okay, I'll write that down to look into it.
Cool. So I think I actually want to discuss the aliasing stuff next meeting, because we probably will
Okay.
run out of time this meeting.
Yeah, it's a longer topic.
Yeah, but these were the things I think that we had discussed doing / not doing for V1. Discovery, vouching, we didn't want to, I don't
Yeah, we'll
think,
punt
touch
that.
any vouching stuff. Sharding pagination, which we talked about, mutable versus immutable, and then fleshing out some examples.
Yep.
And I think that is it.
Didn't Steve mention something about documentation requirements?
What kind of requirements?
Documentation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these are the decisions that we need to do. Discovery mechanism. What are the decisions we need to? I mean, we need to work on the Ecma docs.
Yeah. I mean, other than the aliases, I feel like we may have made all the decisions that we need,
right.
like the important decisions, right? Like there's going to be little tweaks in bike sheds. But like, I
We'll have
feel like
to
we're almost at,
decide.
yeah, go ahead.
I think so too. We will have to decide on some of the conformance requirements. So for example, the optional thing for the index, right? That's great. But how does that apply to the conformance section? I don't know. We need to decide on a few of those types of things.
Yeah, we would have to say like, if the field is present, it must contain a URL and the contents of that URL must conform to this section of the specification. And then we have
Right.
a little sub schema there. Yeah, and we have to decide exactly what that is, but it's hopefully pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, to remind me, have we already decided what the so when you've got something located at .well known, have we actually decided exactly what the name is going to be?
No, that is something that I will probably have to come up with. Thank you, Salve. In the GitHub issue, and then we can debate or discuss or whatever. Hopefully async, but like obviously in the meeting, if not.
Yeah, because we've kind of covered that issue in the sustainability work group.
Mhm.
And make a decision about the name, because then that is what allows the registration of Iana well known. Correct,
Yeah.
Steve? Do I remember it correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like CLE is probably a fine name, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not
I think
attached
so
to
too.
whatever. Yeah. So I'll probably just start with that, and then feel free to bike shed in the issue when I file it, hopefully in the next few days.
Hey Benji, I sent you a text earlier. Not well in the Zoom chat. I don't know if you've actually seen it though. I probably should have put it in Slack. But I noticed the PR that you have is actually against the wrong repo.
Oh,
Yeah. So we actually want it in the specification repo, not the TG3 repo.
oh,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we can
And
still
we'll
iterate on merge that PR and then move it over
exactly.
after.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So that's just an FYI. In terms of the online docs, Jordan, if you can kind of help me, and then obviously go ahead and put your name on this and stuff as well. But that's where the online docs live,
Mhm.
along with the GitHub action that actually generates everything.
Okay.
I will give you. Do you already have admin or maintain access to this repo?
I see settings, so I have something.
Okay, good. All right.
Let's see. Yeah, I have admin, as does Benji, so we're good there.
Good. Okay, awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you can kind of help me with the online documentation, that would be amazing, because I am currently having to do the package URL documentation, as well as all of the CycloneDX, moving all
Sure.
that stuff over. So it's kind of a lot.
Yeah, once we have Benji's PR or whatever, wherever that is, like somewhat finalized, then I think I can convert that to Ecma spec text pretty quick, Ec markup or
Okay,
whatever.
cool.
Yeah, so I'm happy to volunteer for that.
Steve, looking at that repo with the README, would it not help for the README to actually have a link to the effectively the associated repo, so that they can hop straight over to YouTube video links and all that, and meeting notes and stuff like that?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh yeah, meaning the spec repo should have a link to the TG3 repo.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
So in other words, just update the README to add a link.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
okay. So next meeting, what do we really need to decide next meeting? Talk
The
about
aliases
component
stuff, I think.
aliasing,
Alias, yeah.
integers, and then this a little bit of discovery stuff, I guess, with the well known.
Yeah, so we'll by the next meeting I'll have had the well-known thing up for sure. So we'll talk about aliases, because we put that off a bit and it's a big discussion. Then we need to make a decision about count versus integer indexes versus string integer index or IDs, integer IDs versus string integer IDs, and so on. And then number 3, we can debate the well-known stuff and come to a conclusion hopefully there. And I think those are the only 3, not that I'm trying to oversimplify, but those are the only 3 decisions we have left. And the rest is just writing shit down and making sure we all agree on it. Does that track with everyone?
Yeah.
I
Cool.
believe so.
Love it. It's July. I love that. Yeah, really the sooner that I can like, the sooner that we have like a thing and it's like, here, we're ready to send it to Ecma, then we can relax and feature creep all we want and fine tune all we want, because at any point we can just cut it and send it. That's where I want to be.
Yeah. You just want to get, working on your JSON, your NPM package.
Yeah, that's true. Big package still just wants to sell more packages.
You want to get to number 1.
That's right. Yeah, but no, I mean, like it's also that like, partially is I have like, I can justify more work time on writing the tooling after the spec is done. And so like, and I've made commitments that as soon as we hit that point, I hit them months in advance. So it's a nice place to be.
Nice.
Perfect.
Excellent.
It also gives me a place to have more enthusiastic discussions with package registries about displaying CLE information on package pages.
Yeah. You want to talk about dog fooding, right? That's great.
Yeah. So, and I have spoken to both an NPM person and a PyPI person. So there's some possibilities there.
Awesome.
PyPI is a little trickier, but yeah.
Okay. All right. I did talk to Brian, by the way, over at Sonotype. I mentioned that we're
Awesome.
working on this thing and that you would maybe be in touch with him.
Perfect. I'll reach out to him maybe next week. Thank you, Steve.
Cool. Anything else?
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get any 2 of those 3 even, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
All 3 is great. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Cool.
Have a good
See
day.
y'all next time.
You too.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.